Alexander nodded in agreement to his sister. Of course, we will get to the bottom of it. For now, we definitely need to explore more of this place. Lead the way, sis. Cheryl smiled at her brother, glad to see how supportive he was being. But before she could choose a direction to go in, Nora spoke without looking up from where she was. You're going to want to see this. Both siblings whipped their heads around to see what their mother had found. Nora was holding up an extremely tiny object, clasped between a pair of metal tweezers. Alexander squinted his eyes and walked back to his mother, who had begun to carefully dissect the microchip they had found. She was in the middle of carefully taking it apart and inspecting its inner wiring when she had found something. What is it? I can barely see what you're holding, it's so small. Cheryl also walked back to Nora. What is it, Mum? Does it have something to do with Lenny? What is it? Nora sighed and placed the tiny piece of the microchip on the table. It's another type of transmitter. It's partially neuro, but if you look at that little piece connected to it, you can tell there's another important part to its machinery. It's not just a transmitter. Alexander closed his eyes and rubbed his forehead. In English, Mum, please. This is reminding me of all those impossible math Olympiad questions you made me do when we were kids. Nora tilted her head to the side. But you loved doing those questions. You guys carried those books around everywhere. Well, whatever. It still gave me a major headache for a majority of my childhood. Cheryl groaned and interrupted the two of them. Shh, back to the point, please. We can reminisce about our childhood later. The microchip, Mum, what else is it connected to? Nora blinked and looked at her daughter. She forgot that not everyone was as calm as she was when they were breaking into heavily guarded buildings under very dangerous pretenses. Oh, right, the microchip. She turned her attention back to the piece of technology in front of her. I can tell by the way it's wired that it's sending a signal out itself. This microchip wasn't just blocking Lenny's neural pathways, it was also collecting data on him and sending it back to a separate computer. Cheryl cursed under her breath. Ugh, those thieves. You pour your heart and soul into a monkey, and someone just feels like they can steal everything you worked so hard for from right under your nose. She shook her head in disappointment. People disgust me. Alexander awkwardly reached out and patted his sister on the shoulder. He was never good at hugs. I'm sorry, sis, it's not right. But like you said, we're going to get to the bottom of this. Cheryl nodded and snapped out of her funk. You're right. We need to continue investigating. Alexander nodded and beckoned his sister to lead the way. Cheryl then picked a random hallway and pointed down it. Let's go this way. The siblings started to walk down the long hallway, which had many doors on either side. They had only taken a few steps when they realized that Nora was not following them. Mum, hurry, we don't have all day, Alexander called after her. Nora didn't bother looking up from where she was standing. She was still closely examining the microchip. You go, she called back. I want to stay here and see if I can find out where exactly the information in this microchip is being sent to. Maybe I can even get an IP address out of it and solve this whole thing once and for all. Alexander called back. Okay, but yell if you see anything suspicious, or if you're under attack, okay? Nora still didn't look up. You don't have to worry about me, you guys go on ahead, but look after each other, right? Alexander huffed. And you don't have to worry about us either. Then he and Cheryl turned and started to walk down the hallway Cheryl had picked. I hate how right she is, he chuckled as soon as their mother was out of earshot. Cheryl sighed. I know. At least we have our whole lives to get used to it, though. Alexander raised an eyebrow. That's an interesting way to look at it. He looked at the numerous doors before them. Anyways, how do we know which one to pick? We don't have the time to look through all of these rooms. Cheryl narrowed her eyes. None of these doors are important. Let's keep walking. She picked up her speed and practically began jogging down the hallway. Alexander picked up his speed slightly to keep up with his sister. Whoa, how do you know that? We could be missing out on highly important information just because you decided not to take a look. Cheryl chuckled. Alexander, please. Anything super important isn't going to be right in front of our very eyes, you know? You have to think a little outside of the box here. You have to think like a secret organization, all right? Abruptly, the two of them came to a halt. They had reached the end of the hallway. It was a dead end with nowhere to go except for the way they had come. Alexander nudged his sister with his elbow. Is this you thinking like a secret organization? Cheryl narrowed her eyes at him. Yes, actually. Alexander was exasperated. He tried the nearest door, but it was locked. How? There's nowhere else to go. Come on, we have to head back. When he turned back around, his voice trailed off because he was shocked by what he found. Or by what he didn't find. Cheryl was gone. She was standing next to him one moment, but then the next, she had vanished. He called out, Cheryl, where'd you go? Alexander started to get a worried feeling in his chest. How was this possible? He had turned around for a second, and his sister was gone. He had failed at protecting someone again. How was he ever going to prove himself as trustworthy ever again? Then, all of a sudden, a voice rang out above him. Up here, silly.